So in my checklist book, I've got a checklist called Podcasting Checklist. I got to tell you something. This is a really great checklist. If you ever want to start a podcast show, check out this checklist. Come on, let's get into it. Now, I've been asked over the years by friends and clients about how you go about creating a podcast show. Well, this quick and simple podcast checklist should help you get started right away and with total confidence after reading it. Come on, let's get into it. So, how do you create your own podcast? Well, here are the nuts and bolts. I'm going to go through this checklist, just kind of glossing over the main sections. Once you see the main sections that are in this checklist, you can say to yourself, I'm interested in reading this checklist because it looks informative. Okay? So, first, what is your passion or interest or expertise in wanting to start a podcast show? And I just created a list of categories and interests and passions. Find yours. Mix a couple. It's all right. Once you've got that down, it's time to get serious about creating your podcast show. Let's talk about the equipment needed to record your podcast show. Let's talk about the software needed if you want to record your podcast in audio format. Well, what if you want to record your podcast in video format? What software should you use? Here's a recommendation. Also, you're going to need to publish your podcast in a particular manner so that it's read by iTunes, all kinds of podcast websites. This is the way to do it. Here's a great recommendation, Libsyn.com. If you want to create a podcast show, you're going to need a service that publishes your podcast in a particular manner, technically speaking. Go to this website, sign up, rock and roll. Now, there are some alternatives to Libsyn, so I got them listed here. And if you have a WordPress website, well, these are some plugins that you could check out as well. So this is a great section. Also, what is the ideal length of a podcast show? I go into it. 10 to 45 minutes long. Some of them are just 10 minutes long. It's up to you. How many podcast shows do you need to produce? Well, once you start, don't stop. People love to listen to a podcast show daily, weekly, consistently, as long as it's great. Yours is going to be great, so don't stop. Just don't give them one and they'll go 6 months without publishing a new one. What formats should you use? So this section details a lot about formatting a podcast show, from the intro, the middle, the outro, recording tips, topics and content, show styles, what you should say, how do you introduce your show, how do you introduce guests, conversation and dialogue samples, and more notes. I also go into a standard intro, 10 to 30 seconds, content, commercials, music transitions, standard exits, exit music, a lot of good stuff. Give your podcast show a name, title, description, album art. Album art. It's artwork for your podcast. Pick a genre or category, which we kind of discussed earlier. Create a podcast website, or at least a URL, a domain name. Register that domain name in the name of your podcast title. So let's say you have a health and fitness podcast. Well, you might call it myhealthandfitnesspodcast.com. I'm being general to make my point. myhealthandfitnesspodcast.com. What a great way to get others to find out about your podcast when you just say your domain name for your podcast. Oh yeah, check out my podcast. Oh, how do I find it? Well, you just go to myhealthandfitnesspodcast.com. That's why you do it. Copyright. Of course, we're going to copyright our podcast with every episode. It's your copyrighted material. And then how do you promote your podcast so people can hear about it, learn about it, start listening to it? This section is filled with ideas that you need to know in order to promote your podcast. Good stuff. Check your podcast statistics. Periodically, check your podcast download statistics, playtime, average playtime, how many people downloaded it, how many people are listening, so you can gauge how well your podcast is doing. Let's say you got one download or, one person listening to it. Okay, we need to go promote that podcast. Statistics will help you promote your podcast, give you insight as to how it's performing. Good stuff. And then lastly, making money. We got to make some money with this, right? With your podcast show. So you can sell ad spots in the beginning, the middle, at the end. You can have one sponsor that is the big sponsor for the whole show, but you got many sponsors and many ads throughout the podcast. You can align yourself with affiliate products and mention them, or you can sell your own stuff. Look for ways to monetize your podcast as you get bigger and more popular. And that's it. This is a free checklist in Google Doc format on my podcasting checklist. if this interests you, hey, you're in luck. Just go to the description box underneath this video and click on this link right here that says download and print this checklist. Access the free Google Doc version of this checklist for your use. Click the link and it takes you to the Google Doc. Now, very important, click File, make a copy of this checklist and make a copy of it to your Google Gmail Drive, your drive. This makes a copy of this checklist to your drive so you can edit it at will, okay? You can email this checklist to yourself as a Word doc attachment. That's cool. You can download this checklist as a Word doc attachment, or you can just simply print it and review it in hand and do that. Go over it, read through it a couple times, and then bam, act on all the tips. You can also get this checklist in print form when you order the book, My Checklists. Just click on this link right here, get the print version, and that takes you over to Amazon, where you can order the book that includes all 70 checklists. And again, just take a look at these checklists that are inside this one book. It is amazing. Good stuff. All right. Well, hey, I hope this podcasting checklist really helps you out, All right.